My idea of self-care is no longer, yes, I get my hair done and my nails done. That's just maintenance for as a professional or as a person. Self-care is what are you doing for your body, mind, and spirit, to replenish your soul.
Hello, and welcome to the Mindset and Self-Mastery Show. I'm your host, Nick McGowan. Today on the show, we have Cindy Rendon. Cindy, how you doing today?
Good. How are you doing, Nick?
I'm good. I'm excited for us to get in everything we're going to talk about. I appreciate when people bring props, in a sense, with them. Some people will have them behind them or whatever, but you started to rattle off different books that you've brought with you. And I think we can probably get into a lot of that stuff with the reading and just the different types of stuff that we read. I've rattled off a book that was a game changer for me. But why don't we get things started? Tell us what you do for a living and what's one thing most people don't know about you that's maybe a little odd or bizarre.
Sure. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing since 1998. I have my own firm since 2010. And something that is bizarre, not even bizarre, but just most people don't know because I don't advertise it. And actually, another prop is that I'm learning to read tarot. And so these are my latest, flavor of the month is the naysayers tarot. And so you pull a card, and depending on if it's right side up or upside down. Are you familiar with tarot?
Yeah, but feel free
Okay.
to get into it because I know there are
Oh,
people
okay.
listen
Well,
that are, but some that aren't.
okay. Well, I'm still learning. But I started off with the Robin Hood and the Rider Waite, which like the grandfather of tarot, and then there's different other variations of the cards. And so this right now is one of my favorite ones, but it's working on your shadow self. So if the tarot card's upside down, you think about like what is the um, inner work that you need to do or be mindful of for the day. And so it could be something as part of my learning process of it is every day I pull a spread. What is the three cards? What is the overall energy for the day? What do I need to be mindful of? What can I use to assist me? And then I read those cards. And then, because I'm learning to be tech savvy, I will plug them in to my AI. Um, and I'll say, this is what my interpretation is. How can something like this show for the day or manifest for the day? And so, I'm learning to not take, like, if you get the tower, which is typically people think of the tower as destruction and, get the tower is falling over. But as a day-to-day card, the tower could be something as simple as your printer's going to jam, or your computer is going to lock up and you're going to have to do a restart. So, I'm learning to read it from a day-to-day perspective, in addition to learning it from just a more global, what can I look forward to for this year or this month, this podcast, take it
Sure.
however you want. So, but anyway, so I had one of the cards I pulled was the Three of Wands, and so this is and it was upright, so it's making plans. I've made my plans with the Two of Wands, and now the Three of Wands is it's time to put that plan into action. So, it's a good card, and it's a thinking card, which is your thoughts and creativity with the wands. So that is something that most people don't know about me. And then I have my oracle, more props. I also will fact check my tarot by pulling an oracle, and because oracle is more like spoon feeding you, tarot you actually have to tap in to your intuition. But with my oracle, I will pull a card, and it's just amazing how just the universe, like the oracle card I pull will correspond to the message that I've gotten from my tarot. And so it always just blows my mind when that happens. But there you go, something that most people don't know. So,
I'm sure that's not a normal thing that you would just bring up.
yeah, I'm not
That's
going to be in court like
yeah.
let me shuffle my
Hold on
deck.
here. Hold on. Give me a second.
So yeah, let me see what they should say. Do my mama needs some new shoes. So, no.
Well, I think that's pretty interesting from like when I think of lawyers, they're very matter of fact, law driven. This is what the law says. And then being able to be really good at how do we position that in such a way to be able to either help or go against somebody or whatever it is, but using it in the most opportunistic way, and I'm trying to be like, um, I'm trying to use my words
Being
properly here.
strategic.
Yeah, because
Hmm.
the law is the law. This is what
Yeah.
it is, and it's black and white in that way. But then you get to interpret and do what you can with it, but then also kind of build things out from there. Even again, having conversations with lawyers I've worked with, the one in particular that we've mentioned a couple times even before we hit record, and like having those conversations, even watching the show Bull. Have you ever seen
Hmm.
Bull?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the trial science and all of that. And I really appreciate that stuff. But I think from that perspective of going, all right, well, during the day, you work with the law and understand who you're working with, the clients you're working with, and the things that you work on. But then you also have this side that is more mystical and the tarot side. And where's the Venn diagram of that? Like, how does that work together? And how does it help with the work that you do with things that are very black and white? The law says this. If you break that, these are the consequences of this. And how does that all kind of relate?
I think for me, like, I obviously, it is a tool. It is not, I always joke where I'm like, for entertainment purposes only, but I do believe in the universe, and I do believe that there's things that are, that you can manifest things and in energy work. But what I use it for, like if I have a mediation coming up, I'm prepared, but I may say, okay, what do I need to be mindful of for this mediation? And so maybe I might get, like the Five of Swords or something, and then so I'm like, okay, I need to, or, the Seven of Swords, where I need to be more strategic in how I negotiate, or I need to stand firm on, whatever my position is. Or I might get another card like a cups that's more, be more in tune with your emotions, be the Queen of Cups, be more empathetic. And so I will keep that in the back of my mind, while I'm mediating. I'm like, okay, well, let's see how this kind of how this strategy can play out with the knowledge and, information in the law, and, how we can use that for negotiating. And then it's always fun after the fact to look at my cards, because again, I'm still learning, and to see, did it really play out this way? And then that's, how I learn. Because I had one card where the Empress was turned back. She wasn't upside down, but she was the way the positions work. 'Cause I'm learning that you also look at, at their actual position. Are they facing to the left? Are they facing, moving forward? And she was actually facing the opposite direction, towards the past. And in hindsight, we didn't settle that day, but we did settle eventually. And so in hindsight, I'm like, okay, so this kind of was foretelling that we're not going to settle yet, because she's not looking to the future. But, there were some things that had to get worked out. So,
Interesting. I think
but
that's cool. And I love the, people will talk about God, the universe, like all these different, there's so many different ways to put it. And it's all basically kind of the same thing, I believe. Um, and you can be spoken to throughout just life in general. So the medium of those cards, even just watching TV or watching a movie, or listening to songs. I think back to the days when we listened to radio and you would have like sentences that would come up just by changing the radio stations.
that would speak to you.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and just different things that just resonate with us at that specific time, but may not have differently. Like even reading the Bible or reading anything else. Like you might read something and go, "This doesn't relate to me at all," or "I don't get it at all," and then you read it again later, and like it totally relates to everything that's going on. I've wondered at times, can some of those things where you really look for them start to put you into a box, or can they help you in more so cases where you start to then see patterns within things? So have you
I think you
found
see
that,
patterns. Mhm.
yeah, do you find that you look for more of those patterns than kind of constraints from it?
I think that we're all naturally intuitive. And I think that again, this is just a tool because in your gut already what's going to happen. Or like for me with law, I've been doing it, since 1998. So I already have a general idea of, here's what this fact pattern is, here's what the law is, here's the personalities of the parties. So I already know going in where I can push and where we need to, maybe compromise more. But it's just another tool of tapping into your intuition. And so a lot of times what I do sometimes, if I feel like I'm just not, like there's just too much blockage, um, I'll start, keeping just a sign. I call it a signs, signs from my spirit team, my
Sure.
spirit guides. And it could be just a random bumper sticker, or it could be, like you said, a song, or, angel numbers. I call them angel numbers, people, numerology, but it could be just, sequence of numbers, but I'll write it all down, and cause that again is part of your intuition, and it's just the universe constantly communicating with you. But sometimes we get so much in our way that we miss it. And so it's always amazing to me when I start tracking it, like, yes, the universe is communicating to me. I just need to get out of my own way and pay attention to it. So, but yeah, a random thought, you could have, I grew up in the Pentecostal religion, Assemblies of God, and so um, learned the Bible inside and out. And I will have a random thought, like we feed the birds and squirrels and all the wildlife. And I'll look outside my window and I'll just watch them, and then I'll just have this thought like, I care so much about these little animals that that's how much God or the universe, whatever you want to call, cares about us. And so, and that's a message from the universe. And so, but yeah, that's something I learned in therapy, that if a word is a trigger, or if it just some people they think that meditation is new age and it's too and I'm like, oh, then don't call it meditation, call it praying, but it's all just the same intent is there. So um,
I love that you brought up that specific a paraphrased verse about the bird. That pops into my mind pretty damn often, where there are times where it's like you'll be stressing about something, or I'm kind of trying to think too much about this thing. Like, how do I be prepared to go through this stuff to then kind of work through it in the way it's going to work through, and like flow with the river and all. And I'll hear, I care about the birds, but you mean so much more than the birds. And then I'll
yeah,
look out my window and I see a bird. Like, so where I'm at in the foothills of this mountain, we have this coyote fence over here and this other little fence over here, and mountains and all this stuff. And like, I can see these birds at different times, but there's literally a spot right here where these birds just seem to just wander around and then stop and look. And it's happened a handful of times, specifically over the past year, where I'll think about that. And that thought will pop in, like, I care about the birds, but I care about you more than the birds. And they don't worry. They don't worry about these things or what they're going to eat or what they're going to wear or whatever. And I'll look out and there's like this bird just looking around, just straight up looking around. I'm like, see, you don't give a shit. You're just doing you. And
yeah,
what a cool thing. I'm right there with you with the intuition of that intuitive pull that we have, but we can really get stuck being really too deep in this world to not allow ourselves to feel that. And part of the reason why I wanted to have you on the show is to be able to talk about the duality of these things, being in court, working with these things that are very matter of fact, but then also understanding, how do you tie this stuff in? And simultaneously, also, how do you not let that stuff really affect you? Like, if you're working with somebody and let's say they go to jail for a long time, or they had done something really bad, how do you not let that affect not only how you work with them, but affect you as a person, knowing and feeling the way that you do?
I had to learn boundaries. I had what was called, I call it burnout, but it's compassion fatigue. So what I started off my career just doing straight up representing insurance companies, products liability, medical malpractice defense. So it was just very much, business, or more business oriented. I got tired of that. You can't, I always joke that you can't hug, Bridgestone Firestone. It's just a brick building. And so in 2010 is when I decided I'm going to hang my own shingle, because I want to build relationships with people, not with buildings. And so at that point, so I do family law and I do plaintiff personal injury. Um, in 2021, after a decade of doing my own thing, I had major, major burnout. I call it compassion fatigue. I don't know if it really is, but basically secondary trauma from, like you said, your clients kind of dumping on you with their issues, with um, taking on their problems as if they were my own, which they're not. And so I've learned about boundaries. I've learned that I didn't create the facts. I didn't make these choices that set my clients, on the trajectory that they're on. All I can do is work with the facts that I've been presented and try to get them the best outcome possible. But at the end of the day, I'm not the one, like with parents. I'm not the one who chose to leave the kids at the house. With somebody that, if it's been a year and you left your kids, you can't come to court and say, but the dad is a horrible person and he's a terrible parent and, he cusses and screams and hits I'm like, but you left your kids there. So guess what? You've like voluntarily relinquished. So that argument has sailed. Um, so, all that to say boundaries. So I've had to learn what boundaries are. I didn't really understand that. I'll do one plug for my book, Judge Me Not. So I wrote this book that talks about just my journey, how I got to getting into therapy with, because I was incredibly burned out and I just had walked around with tears in my eyes all the time. And I just told people that they're like, oh, it's just allergies, but it really was just my emotional system was just here and I didn't have any way of coping with it. So some of the, I used to give out my personal cell number. And, when you're on the defense side, the claims adjuster is not going to be calling you in the middle of the night or on the weekend. They understand work boundaries. But when you start representing people, they may call you at 11 o'clock or you may get 20 text messages. And my personality was, I need to respond to this right now. I need to fix this for them. And so that's what led, or contributed to my burnout. So I now have a second phone that I give out to clients. And I have my hours set on there. So I don't even get a notification if they've called me or sent me a text. And then, just some other things that I've learned that it helps me to be able to restore myself, mentally, physically, emotionally, so that I can be more present for my clients when I am on the clock. But meditation, running, these are all things that I make more of a daily part of my life.
Literally just started to answer a question. Like I was going to say, once people start to get into therapy or start to figure out a modality that works for them, they then start to uncover ways. Sometimes they're given by a therapist or a psychologist or whoever they're working with. Hey, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? Some of the easy things are like, why don't you journal? Or why don't you just sit and concentrate on your breath for 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever it is. But being able to find meditation and whatever it is that you do, you can find it in different ways. Some people love to go running. Some people do, I don't know, some things that might sound silly or simple to other people, like cooking or doing the dishes or whatever it is, but being able to actually just settle down. Now, you talked about the boundaries of it, which can be really difficult for us to do if we have so many different things pulling at you, clients, family, different things that you need to get done or feel like you need to get done, where it can be harder for you to actually meditate. I was actually having a conversation with my partner about this recently, where she reminded me, there was some quote that somebody said a while ago, if you don't have 20 minutes to meditate, you really need to meditate for 2 hours a day. And like, how fucking irritating that is, where you're like, but I'm working on the 20 minutes, but in all reality, it totally makes sense. But being able to figure out how do you be able to manage those things. Now, talk to us a little bit about the therapy side of it. I want to know how you got to that point to go, all right, I need to step into this. And what were some of the things that you started to understand that tied into your burnout? Because burnout isn't just for lawyers. It's not just for firefighters. It's not just for nurses and all the people that have all these things going on. But burnout is a thing that most people experience, even if they don't understand they're actually burnt out. They feel like, well, I say yes to a lot of things, but you just don't have time for yourself. And how do you then figure that out? So talk to us a bit about that journey to therapy and then being able to get yourself out of that burnout.
Yeah, I finally, years ago, I had had a spiritual life coach, and that was kind of my first kind of dipping my toe into therapy. Um, but there's always this stigma around mental health, and so, and even more so, I think when you're a professional. So I did a little, a coaching package. Learned about Reiki at that time, and so I have my level one. I've been attuned to level one. I'm looking into getting attuned to level 2, and I'm just waiting for the right teacher. When the student's ready, the teacher presents themselves. Um, so what finally got me to a legitimate mental health professional was just I was just having just massive overwhelm. I had a couple of clients who, and if I get too cosmic, let me know. But I had a couple of clients who, like my ancestors, like sent to me to like I needed to get help. And so I had a couple of really toxic clients that just pushed me over the edge, where I was just had tears all the time. Um, I was tired, but I couldn't sleep. I wanted to cry, but I just my childhood. I had an emotionally difficult childhood, and so I learned to just stifle your emotions. Emotions are not safe. And so I went back to the things that I got me through childhood, but they weren't getting me through this next level as an adult. And so the stuff that worked really well, like being an overachiever, working super hard, being a people pleaser, were great when you're growing up. It got me scholarships, it got me, opportunities that I didn't have. But I was finally at a point where it was just, I had to do something had to give. I put out to the universe, these are the things I want. I had a sister who's still very much involved in church. And again, I have nothing against church. It's what got me through my childhood. I knew sometimes I would walk to our church because I knew that if I didn't have a ride, somebody from church at least would take me back home. My church family what were the rock for me growing up. Um, but she was like, "Oh, you just need a Christian counselor who can, pull out their Bible and read Bible verses." And I'm like, I'm a little beyond that. By this point, I had already kind of dipped my toe into metaphysics. And I know that I felt like there was a bigger world out here, the law of attraction, Abraham Hicks. I'd listened to some energy speakers. Have you heard of Christy Murray Shelton? She has the love and above. And so you have, the like the Sophrasia frequencies where, so love is like the 500. And so she talks about love 500 and above. And that's where you want to be energetically, and not being these lower energies of, fear and anger and, depression, things that just keep your vibration low. So I had already learned those things, and was on that trajectory. So I put out to the universe, I want a therapist who is open-minded, who will talk to me. I'm a big sci-fi nerd, so I love Doctor Who. I have my own little bitty, sonic space, screwdriver.
My TARDIS is right here.
There you go. Okay. So, but all of, Harry Potter, all of those things that I'm like, I wish it was real. Or, the Matrix. I'm like, the Matrix is real. It's not just a movie. So I had my list, like, this is who, if I'm going to have therapy, if that's what, universe, that's what you want from me, then here's what I want. And I don't know how I found him. Honestly, I've tried to like recreate that search and I can't. So whatever words I put into the Google search, he popped up. And so, the Stress Dojo. And so I found him. He checked all the boxes. Somebody who is open-minded about talking about metaphysics. Somebody who, and he's very open about it. So I'm not bringing him out of the broom closet, but and we talk about sci-fi stuff, and we talk about just my first session. I'm like, I'm not going to talk about my childhood. That's the past. Here's what work with what you have right now. I have since learned that like who I am right now was formed by what happened back then, and so you have to address that. And so we learned to address that. I learned about I think it's a 60-second wave of your emotions that just feel the emotion. It'll get intense, but it's like a wave. It'll go up and then it goes back down, but you have to learn to feel your emotions. And so that was a really new thing for me because I was just always, let me get back into my mind space. I had my head space, my heart space, and they were two separate places. And I'm learning now to integrate them, which is wonderful. It's been wonderful to, to learn to live in both spaces and not automatically go up into my head space. As a lawyer, you live in your head space. But when you're working with people, you have to also integrate that heart space for them. And so, and with my husband, with him, when I first started working at home, he works from home. And he was thrilled, like, yay, there's somebody else, I have a suite mate. And he would interrupt me in the middle of the day, and I would come at him from my headspace, and he's coming at me from his heart space. And, just clash. And so I've had to learn to, okay, this is the person who cares about me, who, we've been together since law school. Um, I need to come at him with more compassion and come at him with my heart space and, get out of my head space. And so that's also, the therapy has helped with that as well. But it helped me with just, we did some EMDR where you think of a, childhood memory. And that's where I learned that I've always had these pieces. I just couldn't get past the pain to see how everything fit into place. And so for me, I do have a lot of lucid dreams. And so I remember after the first session, I had this dream. And, in the next session I had, I'm like, what? I had this aha moment. I see where everything fits into place. I see, that saying where it's not you, it's them. I'm like, I finally get it. It was never me. It was, it's always my parents. But a lot of stuff that I learned, coping mechanisms that I learned as a child that got me through a difficult childhood or failing me as an adult. And so I had to relearn those things, like being a people pleaser. And like you said, you say yes to everything, it's, you burn out. So I've learned that say yes to what you really want to do, and it makes it more meaningful. And, instead of saying yes to all things. And I've just learned a lot. I've learned a lot more about self-care. I had no idea what self-care meant. When I first started therapy, I'm like, yeah, I get my nails done. I get my hair cut. I'm doing self-care. And I'm like, okay, my idea of self-care now is I'm meditating. I'm eating better. I'm working with a nutritionist now because I realize that I'm eating just crap, processed foods. And so I'm counting my macros. I started taking a new probiotic, which is, I just had, even though I'm drinking, of the energy drinks, apparently Celsius is like, on the continuum of energy drinks, it's the healthier kind if you're going to have an energy drink, but, it's little baby steps. But, so my idea of self-care, journaling, I don't journal as much. I do more on my phone of, like I said, doing a little chart, if I'm wanting to like, what, the universe, why aren't you communicating with me? I'll start like, oh, okay, well, yeah, you did. When I pulled into this parking spot and I looked over, because I have that belief that if you have a little thought in your head, that's your spirit team saying, hey, pay attention to that. Because there's so many random things that, why did I feel the urge to look up right at this time? And I saw that bumper sticker, or I turned the radio and I heard that one phrase, or that speaks to you. And so I think that's really the universe trying to get your attention, trying to speak with you. So my idea of self-care is no longer, yes, I get my hair done and my nails done. That's just maintenance for as a professional or as a person. Self-care is what are you doing for your body, mind, and spirit, to replenish your soul. So
Yeah, and
that's
baby
what
steps
therapy has
with it
done for
too.
me. Oh yeah, sometimes I feel like, one step forward, two steps back, but it's you're still on the trajectory.
And it's all
Um,
part of the growth path of all of it.
I'm a big, if you haven't realized yet, a lot of props. I saw this and it actually says progress, not perfection, but I was just like, progress just seems like I'm making a D. I'm like, excellence, not perfection, because I was always like, it has to be perfect. But I'm like, it's just has to be good enough. Just has to be, but progress was one of those triggers. I'm like, I'm not making progress. So anyway, I put excellence, not perfection, but just little things. So.
And that probably ties back to how you were as a kid. It's interesting because even as you're talking through that, we talked about books, and I mentioned to you about a book that drastically changed the way I look at pretty much everything, The Last Word on Power, and how it ties into a subconscious winning strategy that was developed by our subconscious when we were in our formative years to say, this is how you win in life. This is how you stay safe. This is how you actually grow and do all these things. But you get to a point where you can't actually do any more of it. You have to go a different way because your subconscious is just trying to keep you alive, not trying to help you thrive in things. So for you to take those little steps and make those changes, they're all little steps and good steps. And we can poke holes in all these things, but it's all of our paths. It's our own path to be able to work through this stuff. And I'm sure you noticed, even as you go through therapy, if you have initial conversation, and then 6 months later you talk about something that's similar to it, you can tie back to what you'd worked on 6 months before that to go, wow, I can see the progress of this stuff. And even going into EMDR or any subconscious processing sessions, you'll think that you want to work on something, but you'll end up working on something different. Like I had somebody recently who went through their first subconscious processing session. She was like, what can I expect? I'm like, first off, a few hours. And whatever you think you're going to get into, you probably won't touch that. You'll probably get into something else. And she was like, it totally went this other path, but it felt like that was where it needed to go. And being able to allow yourself to work through that stuff. So you were burnt out for a while. You went through all these different things, and started to go down a path that has led you into all these other paths. But what are some of the things that you do on a daily basis to be able to help you, not only keep yourself moving, but keep you away from that burnout?
Boundaries. I mean, that is the biggest thing, honestly. I have set office hours now. And I communicate with my clients. So, like I just put an out of office for the holidays. I'm out of my firm is closed tomorrow beginning at noon, and I'm not reopening until Monday, January 6th, and I'm fine. And I've put, on my out of office, the courts are closed for the next, courts are open, but for the most part, judges aren't hearing anything. They're taking this time off as well. And so in the past, I always used to have the mindset of I still have to work, I still have to be there for my clients. But that's a quick road to burnout. And so you have to have that time to yourself. But I don't work on the weekends anymore. I used to always work on the weekends. I used to always work late at night. Um, it was nothing to me to work all day and then bring home work and do more work before going to bed. I used to cancel plans with family or friends because I have this hearing on Thursday, so I can't go out. So it's setting those boundaries so I can have more control over my life. That will also help me not to burn out and help me to be more present for my clients. But the telephone boundary, the having set office hours, not working on the weekends, and I just firmly believe, and just having more control over my calendar, um, instead of scheduling things because my client wants to hurry up and get something done. So, okay, well, then I'll just schedule these things back to back. And I'm just setting myself up for failure at that point. So,
What a beautiful lesson to learn. You got to get punched in the mouth enough times to go, okay, I got it. Um, and that I can appreciate the boundaries. It can be really easy for some people to set boundaries, and it can also be easy for people around them to say, well, you're being selfish, but that's a them problem, not a you problem. But for those that are on their path towards self-mastery, what sort of advice would you give to them?
I do believe that your thoughts create your reality. A lot of that comes from the Abraham Hicks. You can be, see, not be, but yeah, you can be, do, and have whatever you want. We set our own internal limitations, and if we will just get out of our own way, then you'll see that anything's possible. And um, I still work with that, but I look back at my own life. I look back at my own career, and I can see where God's hand, the universe, whatever you want to call it, has been actively involved in that trajectory. I came up from, my family didn't have a lot of money. My dad worked in a factory. My mom, she babysat initially, and then she was a secretary, and then she, worked for I grew up in Dallas, so DART, which was the bus system. We were very much working class. I got a full ride scholarship to SMU, and then I got, I was valedictorian of my high school. I mean, that's part of the people pleaser, working hard, um, look at all I've accomplished. You have to love me. That was that inner child. So, and then went on to law school. I went to UT in Austin, which is one of the top 10 law schools in the nation. And these are all things, that in my little head, I would have been hitting the brakes. I'm like, no, there's no way, there's no way, there's no way. But I have learned, and part of this from growing up in church, God's in control, nothing's impossible. And so I already had that mindset, and then I've just tried to take it to the next level. And so in my own practice, The nice thing about being self-employed is that it allowed me the freedom to, as I'm working, I'm listening to Abraham Hicks videos, or I'm listening to, stuff about energy and raising your vibration. And, so I'm typing away, working on a brief, and I'm listening to the love and above, and, what's the programming that you had as a child? Why does, like money, a lot of people have these opinions about money that hold them back. What is it when I talk about, make what's a big number in your head, and what does that bring up for you? And, and just destroying those, limiting beliefs. And so, like in my own practice a few years ago, I had a multi-million dollar case that there's no reason why these people should have come to me. They couldn't remember who gave them my name. They were interviewing with me and with another firm that advertises all over Texas. They picked me, and it was like the perfect storm of a case, because it was a brain injury, catastrophic personal injury case. They were hit by a commercial vehicle. So you had more than just the state minimum limits. I had a much bigger policy. The driver also sued my client. So I had his insurance company providing a defense. And so they covered all of the case expenses of getting the accident reconstructionist. All I had to do was take care of the medicine part, take care of the damages part, but they covered all of the deposition fees, they covered the accident reconstruction fees, all of the big ticket items were just covered by his insurance company. And so, it's like having, like, here's my in-house counsel, my co-counsel on this case. And we eventually resolved it after 2 years. But it was, one of the biggest cases that my firm on the PI side has had, that, these other big firms would be chomping at the teeth, to get. And that was totally the universe, bringing that case to my firm. And so when I've talked to my therapist about this, like, it's such a mind fuck, because I'm like, I want more cases like that. What do I need to do to get that? And I'm like, but I didn't have to do anything to begin with other than just be who I am. And so, I'm still, that's one thing I'm working with right now, is getting out of my head that what can I do to replicate this? Because I didn't do anything to get it in the first place other than working on my vibration, working on my, beliefs, that, and not hitting the brakes. You can't say, like, I can be, see, do anything, but I can't do this, because then you're hitting the brakes to the universe. And so it's just getting out of my way. And that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, great way to put that. It's easier said than done, where you're like, well, I just need to get out of my own way. But the more that I think the thing that we can do, that we can be really active with, that I tell myself, I tell other people I work with, guests, whatever, it's just doing the consistent work, whatever that looks like for you, and allowing it to flow and work the way that it does. Even you moving from modality into different ways of looking at energetics and all these different things, you're continuing to do that work. And that work will bring things to you in a different way. That one big case may have just been able to show you that you can do these other things. And you'll get other cases down the road, but you may get that energy from somewhere else. But just continuing to do that work, and you're doing it. That's kind of the easy yet really difficult thing for us to do, is just continuing to do that and allowing ourselves to be open to go, oh, I haven't really been doing this. I've slacked on meditation at different times. And even my partner was like, are you meditating? I'm like, damn, no, not like I need to be. And being able to shift and course correct and still showing yourself grace as you go through it without getting stuck in your head. One of the things you've pointed out is being able to have that kind of bridge between your head and your heart, and allowing that to be a two-way bridge and not just one or the other, and working on that instead of just getting stuck in one and being upset about it, which can be, much easier to do because you're like, damn, why does this keep happening? But for all of us to just kind of work through that. So I love all the stuff that we've talked about. I appreciate you being on today. Before I let you go, where can people find you and where can they connect with you?
Sure. They can go to my website, and it's, www.cynthia, Cynthia, and then my last name, Rendon, Rendon.com. So CynthiaRendon.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed it.